think if you're a criminal and you're hiding, just buy a ticket. So it's got that. Then our tactics have got that benefit from a wider policing point of view, and they'll tell you when you speak to the transport unit, their figures, their results compared to the force are kind of right up there, because we give them all the tactics to uncover all of this stuff. So it works really well, complementary. But yeah, so that's kind of the operational arm. We've then got the education and engagement.
Yeah.
So education, we do most primary year 6. There's a couple of local authorities that don't buy into Crucial Crew, which is our mechanism for doing it, but we're trying to get into their similar programmes. And we do that because you get into year 6 at primary school, you're about to go to secondary school, you're probably going to travel for the first time on your own.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a bit giddy because it's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get this bit of freedom. So we go in at that age and we say, this is how to travel safely, keep yourself safe, but also if you do mess about, this is what we can do. We can take your passes away. You could end up ultimately getting a criminal record. So we give them the bit of the wag your finger as well, as part of that. Secondary schools is picking up at the minute, actually, which is where we kind of need to do the prioritisation work, because we can't do them all because there's too many. But we tend to do those on a reactive basis. So where we've had a problem reported by a bus operator or Metrolink with a certain school, we'll put an offer in around that school, and that offer varies depending on what we need. So it could be whole school assembly, or it could be a group of 12 kids that we know have been causing the issues, and anything in between, really. And we purchased last year some virtual reality headsets, and we've got a video around throwing bricks at buses, which again is one of our biggest issues. So we can do some of that. It gives us a nicer offer to get in there.
Yeah.
Something a bit different. But apparently, and I'm no expert, but apparently when you watch these videos in virtual reality, it creates an actual memory. So you end up with a natural consequence, even though you weren't really there. So that's what we're trying with the secondary schools. We do colleges, but it tends to be a bit fluffier. So it tends to be where they've got kind of not freshers fairs, but those kind of sessions. So we'll go in with a stall, we'll get some promotional stuff, torches, rape alarms, bamboo straws. Students love them for some reason. And just for people to come to us, really. So have a free pen, let's have a conversation. So we do colleges in that way, and we do the university freshers fairs in the same way as well. But again, those messages tend to be more around keeping yourself safe, because it's not an antisocial kind of core. Some of the colleges are, but in the main. And then we'll do engagement wise, we need to do more around community groups, like I mentioned. So again, we do those on a reactive basis, and then we'll do various bits and pieces. So if there's an event that a district are holding, we'll rock up and be part of that, put a stall out, etc. And we do things like meet the manager sessions, where we'll just set up on a tram stop and let people come and tell us all their woes. That's more of a kind of data collection piece. So there's that as well. The comms and marketing we've discussed already, and then I think the other one is the infrastructure and environment and influencing some of that. So to give you an example, we're doing some work in Newbold in Rochdale at the moment, because the houses are being terrorised, bless them, with kids throwing stones from the tracks over the fence and breaking their windows into their gardens, etc.
Right.
So for that one, we've put in higher fencing. That's not worked. We've put in more signage. That's not worked. We need to sort out CCTV because it's not good quality, but that's longer term. We can't just swap it out. So we're going to look at some temporary cameras. We've done various operations, etc., but it's too sporadic. It's not it's just as and when. So what we're looking at now is putting some resin on top of the ballast, the stones, to make sure they can't be picked up. So those are the kind of things, and we'll do a full programme when we go and do a site visit. We'll review everything, the CCTV, stairwell mirrors, lighting. Is there graffiti? Because that makes people feel less safe. Could we take a shelter out and make it glass? Is that going to be better? So we'll do all of those kind of infrastructure bits. I do think there's a need for my team to work more closely with GMP, because GMP have got a team of people that do designing out crime. That's their role.
Okay.
And I would like to kind of upskill some of my team to be able to do some of those formal assessments, because we do it, but we've got no kind of credibility, is not the wrong word, but we've not had any training to do it. So I think actually, if we could work with GMP to uplift our skill set, we could do more of these, because what you find is they've got so much to do, it's hard to do the churn that we need, and we could put a programme in then to constantly review different sites and try and get a bit more ahead of the game instead of being so reactive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've just done an academic study which was dreadfully boring, around lighting.
Okay.
Because actually we go for lights on, nice and bright, but actually in the night time you walk outside then and suddenly everything feels really dark because you've been in this beacon of light. Pink lighting, teenagers don't like pink lighting because it shows up all your blemishes, so we've kind of toyed with installing that to stop them gathering. Obviously you're aware of blue lighting and drug use, etc. So yeah. And then the other thing we do a bit of reactive stuff. Well, I've spoken about the homelessness site, so we're locking up 4 sites overnight at the minute to try and deal with that, and we're doing that in partnership with the local authorities, so we've got that follow-on support, because obviously we just move problems around otherwise.
Yeah.
But we also do a similar thing with toilets, so we've got a couple of toilet related issues. The drug use, obviously, I think it's prevalent everywhere, isn't it? But drug use and general ASB, but we also have an issue with cottaging at a couple of our sites. So that's one where you look slightly differently at what you can do with the infrastructure, because it's not an ASB that you need a different point of view to deal with some of that stuff as well. So yeah, that's probably a bit of a run through the environment infrastructure work that we do.
Brilliant. Just going back to the education and engagement. So just so I understand, who delivers that for you?
So team-wise, there's me. I've got an ops manager who manages the travel safety support and enforcement officers, manages where we do the operations side of the team, and then I've got 2 engagement officers that are roughly split, but I don't let them have any hard lines. We all have to do whatever we need to do. They're roughly split into the schools and the communities side of the world, and then I've got 1 travel safe officer as well, who does kind of we have trackers for known nominals, we issue exclusion notices, we remove passes. She does keeps us all ticking, really, does all of that kind of churn.
Okay. Wow. That's really helpful. So, just talk a little bit about marginalised groups, if we could. So you've talked about women, you've talked about gender-based stuff, LGBTQ plus, all that. So are those your main concerns, or are there any other groups that you feel are disproportionately unsafe? So maybe the elderly, ethnic minorities, disabled. What are you seeing or hearing, or both?
The top of the shop is the women and girls piece at the minute.
All right.
Absolutely. We have done, not a lot is the wrong word, because we haven't done a lot, but we have done some work with Stonewall and people like that. So where we it's less about incidents and more around the infrastructure bit again. So for instance, I mentioned the cottaging. So where we're looking at taking action on that, there's a lot of sensitivities around it. So we've done work at that point with Stonewall and people like that to say, how is this going to be perceived? Because we did shut the toilets, and then the MEM reported us as homophobic. So it's that balance all the time. It's a really difficult one. I think definitely the women's piece is top of the shop. We get a lot of concern, or more recently for obvious reasons, but a lot of concern from the Jewish community, but they're not necessarily users, so it's a really tricky one. But we have got one big Jewish school in Greater Manchester, but they tend to have their own private bus services. But we have had a fair few meetings with them to discuss safety. But again, I don't want to say that's just a perceptions piece, because obviously the world's upside down, isn't it? But we don't have the incidents to support what they're saying, I suppose, is what I mean.
Right.
Couple of niche pieces of work we've done. So we had a university student that did a study on lesbians using buses. So we kind of brought her in, let her present her findings, and then had a two-way conversation about, you know, what it is that we do, what she thinks we could do better. A lot of that was focused on the policing distrust point. Which is really difficult to address. And then we've our campaign that's due for October, the gender-based violence bystander campaign, for the first time ever, we've put that through a lived experience panel. So we've got a group of 10 women from a variety of backgrounds that are victims of various severities of domestic violence. And we brought it to them to kind of let them dissect it, give us views, change things. And it was really interesting because the campaign design was supposed to be the perpetrator as a silhouette, woman sat in front and a bystander kind of trying to diffuse the situation. And overwhelmingly, we put it up on the screen, and overwhelmingly everyone said, well, why is it a black man? It was like, no, it's not, it's a shadow.
Right, interesting.
But that was so even just for that point, you know, sometimes you don't see what's in front of your face, do you?
Yeah.
But yeah, we did, as I said, we did BBC Radio Manchester yesterday, and that was an older people's phone in, because I think it's older people's National Older Persons Day today. So that was a phone in, and it was Mike Sweeney asking. He had a panel, but he was also asking people to ring in, and overwhelmingly, bless them, they're like, "Oh, I'm fine using the bus. It's really good. I could just do with an extra route to such a place."
Yeah.
So they were quite. But I don't know. There's something about the resilience of older people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a time of travel and things like that as well.
That's true. That's true. But one of them was like, "Oh, when I see people vaping, I just tell them to pack it in." And that's like, okay. So we didn't really get anything of concern. And I think it plays into that transport users and non-transport users, doesn't it? Because a lot of older people are and have been public transport users for a long time. So they're probably more comfortable in that environment than someone that it's the first time getting on a bus.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, the GMCA are going to be doing an age-friendly strategy. So I went to the first workshop for that. So we are in these spaces. You know, same thing, the hate crime refresh. GMCA's hate crime refresh is starting in a couple of weeks, so we're in there as well. So we will do the work, but I wouldn't like to say we have a particular outlier.
No.
In terms of people a particular group being victimised.
Okay.
But for the women and girls piece.
And accessibility or anything like that, that's not coming through.
No, we're to be fair, we're pretty accessible. So all of Metrolink's fully accessible. The only issues we have is when the lifts don't work, which happens more often than we'd like. But there's a I think there was something about their indoor lifts that have been installed. They're indoor lifts that have been installed outside, or something like that. So when it rains, they don't work. But they're all being swapped out at the moment. So
oh wow, okay.
Most of the network is fully accessible.
And what are you seeing kind of average usage and
in terms of patronage, in terms of numbers? So patronage is on the up for both. So Metrolink, unbelievably, because I don't think any of us thought this would happen, obviously fell off a cliff during COVID, is now higher than pre-COVID.
Wow, okay.
But the usage has changed. So we used to be driven by the commuter market, but actually leisure has kind of taken over. But yeah, we're up on pre-COVID levels, which is astounding because, like I said, I don't think any of us thought it would happen.
No.
There is something about we've not increased ticket prices for I think 6 years on Metrolink, and there's no intention to either. So it was always seen as quite expensive, but the longer we don't increase ticket prices, the more affordable it seems in comparison, I guess, with everything else going up. And then obviously bus patronage is on the up as well, but with slash fares on bus, so it's £2 or £1 if you're a child, and that's it flat. And there's no intention of ever taking that away. Whereas I could get the bus, 4 stops down and pay £5.5. It's now really, really cheap, and obviously that influences people when you're looking at. Because the thing with public transport is if it can be uncomfortable because it can be busy, everyone's coughing. I was on tram yesterday and everyone was coughing. When you sit in your car and you can put your heater on and you can have your coffee and you can put your radio on and it's quite comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, if you're driving, petrol costs a fortune. And you're parking in the centre of Manchester, that's a tenner.
I know.
When you can get on the bus for £2.
But the traffic is horrendous. There's something about not sitting. If you're in traffic in a bus, you don't have that same stress, do you? Which you do, because it's kind of like you just go, I'm not in control. I'll just have to deal with it. But in a car, you're like, oh my God, I've got to get there, aren't you? It's really weird.
Yeah. I think there's a number of different things that are increasing the patronage. But usage is up generally across the board.
That's good. I'm just looking at the time. We might have to do a two-parter because we're only through the first theme. But this is really good. This is really good. So I was just going to say kind of trends over time. You might have spoken to this quite a lot already. But is there any kind of, we're just talking about any shifts that other than, patronage you've seen on the up, anything else that you would call out and that linked to kind of future safety activities?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously it all depends on the state of the nation, doesn't it, ultimately? But the key trends we've seen, the uplift, the effects of COVID, the uplifts in youth ASB, the kind of gender lens that everyone's got at the moment, and the fact that those kind of rocks are being tipped over. We missed to not talk about the fact we've got a new government. So what funding resource we have was committed by the previous government. So we were now waiting for confirmation to see whether that continues or not. And if some of that doesn't continue, there's going to have to be some conversations around things that don't need to get done anymore.
Yeah. And what about other kind of local government decisions? Because obviously there was congestion charging and things like that. Where's that at in terms of what other, we're thinking about climate change and stuff like that that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's I don't think there's any aspiration to go back to a charging congestion zone. So clean air still needs to be looked at. We've still got clean air targets. Okay. I'm not an expert in this space, but I think when it was originally, a lot of the direction came from central government.
Right.
And once you devolve some of that, we can do things slightly differently and slightly better. We still have to meet our clean air targets. So that work still needs to be done, but I think there's other ways in which we can do some of that isn't so heavy-handed. So I don't think there's any return of the congestion charging conversation due. I might be wrong. Certainly not what I've heard. From a crime point of view, those cameras are quite useful. Because they're quite useful in that sense. So there is a piece of work in terms of how and if we can share that information with the police. People hate the clean air cameras, so they get targeted constantly. They're forever being shot off lampposts and etc. because of their monitoring capability. Yeah. But if you're not up to no good, it doesn't matter, is my argument. Yeah. We've just introduced AI cameras as a trial. So we've got cameras up now. They're also being targeted. One got set on fire in Wigan last week. They can spot drivers using their phones or not wearing a seatbelt.
Yeah.
So that's having quite good successes as well, which will hopefully bring down the killed and seriously injured piece on the highway, which sits. So I'm Travel Safe, and we've got a Road Safe partnership as well. They do all of that type of stuff. It's different but complementary.
Okay. Well, I was just going to go on to technology, actually, while we've got the last 5 minutes or so. So if you're thinking about AI, so there's a really great example there if you're trialing the AI cameras. And obviously you've mentioned mobile apps and some of the technology that you've put in around reporting and stuff like that. What else are you seeing coming through, or have you seen in other areas perhaps?
Nothing really in other areas.
So everybody's, because you talked about drones, haven't you? You talked about apps, AI, real-time tracking.
So there's a couple of things. The first thing is the B Network app. So we've got, as part of moving to the B Network, we've got an app. It's not very good at the moment, but don't quote me on that. But that gives us capability to, so for instance, I mentioned a number of the Safe Places apps, the Walkspace, the How You Get Help. We need to take some of that technology and put it into our app. So we've already got live chat in there, but actually we could have a safety page in the app that could, do these different things, plan you a safe walking route, put your kind of contact details in for someone, all that type of stuff. And actually a good one to look at is Uber. Okay. They've just introduced a way to log your journey, let people know where you are, and to kind of counter the fact that a lot of people didn't feel safe using Uber. So we need to do some of that into the B Network app, and it gives people one place to go to find everything that they need. Now, that plays back into your age-friendly conversation because it's an app. So there needs to be other things as well. It can't be just that. But there's that. The other thing is, through our security contracts, we're constantly trialing different bits and pieces. So some of our newest CCTVs, we've just built Stockport Interchange. The cameras on there have got AI capability built in that's not turned on at the moment, which can do various things. It can do trespass alarms. We can geofence areas that people shouldn't be in. It can look for people dwelling for too long, all that type of stuff. So it's imminent that that's getting turned on, but that's kind of a future thing for us. And then we've been looking, we've trialled additional cameras and passenger counting machineries, I don't know what they're called, towers. But we have had some demos as well around aggression monitors, aggression alarms, vape alarms, different bits of technology that we could access. But we kind of get the latest on that through our security contractor.
Okay. Wow, interesting. So there's a lot of opportunities potentially in that.
There is. I mean, the issue with all of that is money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities, but not a lot of money. Okay. And if we're going to be in the space of, because we're going to have to demonstrate efficiencies across all of this, and I don't think there is any appetite to reduce what it is that we do, but I think we could do it
more efficiently. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And you've said you're not aware of what anybody else is doing with technology innovation.
I'm not aware of anything that I've looked at and thought I would like that. I mean, the other bit from a data point of view we've got, so I've got a system that's Travel Safe Incidents, TSI, and it was built by someone in TFGM 1,000 years ago. And it's a web-based platform, and we use it to report incidents, and the bus operators use it. We give them logins and they use it to report incidents. And it works, but it's not the best. So I did ask, as we moved into bus franchising, if I could have an incident management system. But it cost versus budgets, etc. It didn't land, didn't get one. But our security contractor have got a system that they use to log incidents as well, which is a bit more intuitive. And Metrolink use a different system. So I think at some point, if we were going to look at this properly, having an incident management system where I could load it up and it'd do me a dashboard, so it'd tell me, alert, staff assault, whatever, and do some of that kind of analysis without human intervention would be really handy, because that would give you a bit more agility and be able to see and be able to prioritise where you're doing your kind of where you're focusing your efforts in whatever it might be. So that I'm not saying it lets us down, it works, and it's because it's so basic, it doesn't really break. but it needs the human analysis.
Yeah.
And there'll always be an element of that. We'll always need some of that. But actually that quick, can I just have a quick look at, can I click on Rochdale and see what's going on? I can't do that at the moment.
No, needs to be work a bit smarter for you. Okay, interesting. Right, I'm going to pause there because I'm conscious of your time and I've got a couple of things to ask you about tomorrow.
Okay.
So we might need to put another session in, is the upshot, because we've already got through a third of this. But it's really good stuff, so I'm really chuffed with that.